Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some ProRevenge. Our first story today comes to us from The One Bonesaw. I'm not left-handed. I'm also not allergic to poison ivy. Let's jump right in. Sorry for the Princess Bride reference, I thought it made a better title. I just remembered this experience when I was over on another thread and realized this would be perfect for petty revenge. But that sub won't let me post it, no matter how much I soften it down, because they think all of you are a bunch of little babies who can't handle the horrors of poison freaking ivy. So F 'em, I'll just post it over here. And I'll return it to its original form when I first found out they wouldn't let me. Okay, on to the show. So I'm one of the few people who aren't allergic to either poison ivy or poison oak. A superpower I once used for evil. Small evil, not the bad kind. When I was in the Boy Scouts, it was still a quasi-paramilitary organization, and we went on a camping trip for a jamboree one summer. I was about 13 or 14 at the time. This particular jamboree had us camping all week long with our local National Guard. They instructed us that week on shooting the M14 and M16, as well as the M2 and M249 machine pew-pews. They also instructed us on pathfinding and had us running a 10-mile course through the Arkansas countryside. I suppose I should mention that I absolutely hated most of the scouts in my troop. Half of them were psychopaths. One of them chopped a kid's finger off after the kid dared him to, and the rest were a bunch of little entitled D-bags. So I really didn't have a single friend in scouts, ever. It's one of the reasons I eventually quit. Towards the end of the jamboree, shortly after I woke up on Sunday morning, our head scout, an Eagle Scout no less, whacked me on the forehead with the butt end of a knife that he was using to eat peanut butter, directly from the jar. Why? I don't know. Just because I was there, and he felt like it, I guess. Now, the day before, while we were doing some basic reconnoitering of our course, I happened upon a patch of poison ivy, and noted its location on my pathfinding map. After the silverware incident, I honestly hadn't really thought of getting back at him, or any of his other psychopathic sycophants, who thought me getting thumped in the head was funny. However, when it came time for me to take over on our pathfinding march, we were only a couple hundred yards from that patch of poison ivy I found the day before. I didn't know if anyone else knew it was there, but I had an opportunity, and if the Boy Scouts taught me anything, it was, whenever an opportunity presented itself, you be a man and effing go for it. Alrighty, if you insist. The best part was, because it was July, we were all wearing shorts. I marched us straight through that patch, and not one single scout, tenderfoot, life, or eagle identified it. They were completely, beautifully oblivious. I had the best night I had ever had on any camping trip in Scouts just a few short hours later as I listened to the cries of every single scout in my troop as they went absolutely mad from the horrible pain and itching that poison ivy causes. And the cherry on top, not one of us, nor any of the other troops, nor even the National Guard guys had a single effing drop of calamine lotion. It was the most cathartic revenge I've ever experienced. After all of the BS and bullying I had put up with from those little Lord of the Flies F-wads, the sweet sounds of their suffering lulled me gently to sleep that night. We had to break camp immediately the next morning. Aw, dang it, I was just starting to have fun. I don't know what the National Guard guys had planned for that day, but I didn't care. I never wanted to go on that jamboree in the first damn place. I got home early on Sunday, and it was one of the best days ever, as I happily returned to a wonderful shower, a clean bed, and our lovely, lovely air conditioning. I love you, air conditioning. You'll be my best friend, won't you? Yeah, you never let me down. Air conditioning, I can always count on you. Okay, maybe I can see why they deleted it the first time, but I seriously tried everything to make this as rated G as possible, and their filter just wasn't having it. Someone down in the comments said to OP that they should have yelled piss break just to see how many would drag their willies over the poison ivy. OP responded with 100% unnecessary. Poison ivy spreads when you touch it. All of them had it all over their junk long before they ever felt the first symptoms. That's actually one of the worst things about poison ivy. You inadvertently spread it before you even feel its initial effects. Now, something to mention is just a little bit of a disclaimer, and it's been mentioned many times in the comments for this story, that poison ivy reactions are a build-up reaction, so you could be completely immune to it when you're young, but then later on in life, you will not be immune to it anymore. You could start reacting to it, so just keep that in mind, and don't play with that stuff, because it can get serious. Do me a quick favor and take a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're actually not subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our second story today comes to us from Evidently Apostate. I love you, bud, but I'm cutting your throat. Let's jump right in. I'm a millwright who specializes in rebuilding natural gas turbines. I run with a very top caliber crew where everyone has a role to fill. My role is overseeing anything that's lifted with a crane. My technical title is rigger. If a load fails, it's my fault. If someone gets hurt while I'm in control of a lift, it's my fault. If equipment is damaged while I'm in control of a lift, it's my fault. The incident in question happened about 2 years ago, but we'll need to go back a couple years further to get the backstory. I was a fresh member of the crew and had demonstrated competency in rigging, so after roughly 6 months with this group, my superintendent put me in charge of all rigging. I wasn't the fastest rigger, but I was safety focused and insisted on doing it right every time, even if it took a little longer. This meant that my superintendent didn't have to watch over every rigging task and could go relax because I had it under control. Another millwright joined the crew about the same time I did. We'll call him Larry. We didn't get along at first, but after a few months, we became friends. Larry was the act now, think later type, much like the superintendent I travel under. Larry was prone to making mistakes because of that attitude, but he was very fast and worked like a mule at all times, and I respected that. He wasn't especially skilled in any one area, so he had no special position. That meant sometimes he'd get put on less glamorous work, and I soon learned he was very jealous of my position as the rigger. At times, he would make comments like, "I'm gonna take your job," not in getting me fired, but bumping me down a rung and him taking my spot as rigger. He'd come up behind me while I was looking over my checklist to point out something I may not have checked yet. If supervision was near, he'd make sure he was heard. At this point, I should mention this, I stick out like a sore thumb on this crew. I was raised in a very strict Christian cult, but in my mid-20s, I realized what was going on and left, at great cost, losing my family and friends because of strict shunning rules the cult practices. Some of these stricter things stuck with me, like I've never been intoxicated, I don't use tobacco, no recreational drugs, I speak professionally without slang or colloquialisms for the most part. These traits stick out from a crew of men that travel the road and work in harsh environments away from home for months on end. But Larry, he fits right in. Larry quickly became the superintendent's puppy, bringing him gifts of his favorite alcohol, staying out late after work with him, even rooming with him on the road. I, on the other hand, leave work, hit the gym, cook food for the next day, and make sure I get at least 6 hours of sleep so I can perform the next day. I realize that puts me at a disadvantage socially in the workplace, but I prefer to let my work speak for itself. Anyways, fast forward about 18 months, we're starting a project just before COVID hits. About 2 weeks into the job, I have to attend a mandatory class through my union. It's a 40-hour class and in a different state, so I'll be gone for pretty much an entire week with travel time. I get permission from supervision to leave, with Larry rigging in my absence. A few days later, I'm laying in bed stressing about the final test I have to take the next morning. If the test isn't passed, the entire week is wasted. I always psych myself out before a test, but in reality, I don't have anything to worry about as I'm a good student and test well. My phone goes off. It's a text from Larry. "I love you, bud, but I'm cutting your throat." I reply, "What are you talking about? When you get back, I'll be the rigger. You can do the crap work from now on." I'm not proud of the response I came back with, but it's how I truly felt in the moment. Be careful about cutting the throat of someone smarter than you. I'm far from the smartest person you'll ever meet, but I do enjoy reading, studying, and learning. And being smarter than Larry wasn't an accomplishment by any stretch of the imagination. The next morning I passed the test and headed back to the job, where Larry had in fact usurped my position as rigger. and was lording it over me as I went about doing the tasks he normally would do. To be completely honest, it was kind of like a vacation at first. Get paid nearly $40 an hour to clean parts or torque flanges with no stress? Sign me up. But I was upset. I was upset because I knew I did my job better than he would. I knew that he got along better with the superintendent because of their similar personalities, but I didn't feel that I should lose my position simply because Larry had more in common with our superintendent than I did. Regardless of that, I was now dealt these cards and I had to play them. Just 3 days after I got back from class though, the job was shut down. COVID-19 was just now sweeping the country. Out of an abundance of caution, the plant shut the project down until further notice. We were sent home for about 3 days and then called out to an emergency shutdown where a turbine had crashed. We roll out and are on the job 48 hours later in the middle of nowhere, Alabama. We get right to work. On this particular unit, you pull the entire roof off in 2 sections with a crane to open the enclosure. Compared to many things we lift in a project like this, the roof weighs very little. The turbine rotor may weigh over 100,000 pounds, but the roof usually weighs around 7,000 pounds. Lightweight, but it is large and there are critical parts around the roof that can be damaged if not lifted carefully. Typical procedure is to be on top of the roof after it's unbolted, be in a full body harness, and tied off to an approved anchor point capable of holding at least 5,000 pounds per OSHA regulations. We then slowly take the weight off of the roof with the crane until it's floating and then climb down off of it and continue the lift until it's set on the ground or on a truck to be moved. The superintendent instructs me to go on the roof with Larry and assist him. Do whatever Larry tells you to do. Okay, boss. I put on my harness and climb to the top and begin to assess the situation. The rigging to lift the roof is 4 5-ton chainfalls. It's capable of safely holding 20 tons, well over the weight of the roof. The crane is also well overrated for this lift, even with the boom extended all the way out in order to clear another building on the way to the ground. Larry has it all rigged up, but no tension on the wire rope slings. And then I notice his crucial mistake. He has forgotten to account for boom deflection. When a crane takes the weight of a load, the boom flexes down. Depending on the crane setup and the weight of the load, it can mean that while your crane hook might be centered in your load with no weight on the hook, once you get the weight of the load on the crane hook could be anywhere from a few inches to a number of feet off center, which means that when the load comes off the ground, it swings. Swinging is bad. Always. Enough weight swinging could tip the crane, crash into equipment, crash into a person. It's very dangerous. At this point, I start calculating. Is this weight enough, even swinging, to tip this crane? No, not even close. Is it enough to break a chain fall? No, not even close. Are there any people working around us that could get hurt? Nope, it's just us. Is there any equipment that could be damaged if it swings? Yes. An electrical control panel which has all power killed to it and has been disconnected is in the swing path. I decide to let Larry hang himself. He looks at me and asks what I think. I tell him, "This is your show, boss." He asks what I mean. I look him in the eye and draw my finger across my throat. He gets nervous because he knows exactly what I mean. Starts double checking everything. He still doesn't notice the boom deflection. After a couple minutes, he decides I must be talking out of my butt and proceeds with the lift. I stop him and remind him to tie off with his harness. He doesn't realize it, but we're about to go for a ride. Generally, when I'm rigging, I first find out what the thing I'm rigging to weighs. It's a vital piece of information. If I know what it weighs, I can have the crane operator track how much weight he has on the crane, and I'll be able to know when the object should start to pick up. If we get to over 10% more than the object should weigh, there may be something stopping it from moving, and we need to stop and reassess the situation. Rigging could fail, the object you're lifting could jump into the sky, all kinds of mayhem may ensue if a hidden bolt holding something together breaks because you used too much force to lift it. I ask Larry if he knows how much the roof weighs. He doesn't. I do, but don't tell him. He starts signaling the crane to slowly hoist up. The operator complies and starts lifting. I'm watching the boom get pulled more and more off center. We're probably 2 feet from the center of the load at this point. meaning a swing that could travel nearly 4 feet. I stop Larry and ask him to see how much weight is on the crane. 11,000 pounds, 4,000 more than what it should weigh. This roof is in a bind because we're not picking it up straight, but at an angle. It's either not going to move or we're about to fly. I brace myself. Hoist up slowly, Larry calls over the radio. Boom! The whole roof shoots a good 2 feet into the air and swings wildly towards the control panel. Larry and I are riding it like pirates in the crow's nest in a hurricane. We crash into the control panel, bending it over at a 45-degree angle, destroying most of its components. People start pouring out of the nearby trailers to see what the commotion is all about. The crane operator is yelling over the radio, asking what the hell just happened. I'm smiling. Larry is shaking. He sees me smiling and knows that I knew. We get the roof set on the ground and are met by our superintendent. He's chewing Larry's butt hard. He gets to me and asks why I let it happen. I just say, I just did what Larry told me to do. The superintendent is no dummy. He's seen a thing or two and knows exactly what went down. Larry is demoted, and I'm reinstated as rigger immediately, and a few shifts later, it's all smoothed over. Larry and I are actually good friends now. We've been through a lot together and have each other's backs these days. He's now the foreman on our crew and lets me do my thing. Failing your way to the top is still a valid way of progressing in my field, but I'm happy for him. He's actually good at it. And I guess that's all there is to say about that. So besides the fact that Larry didn't do all the proper calculations for that lift, well, he also wasn't paying attention. Because when OP told him that he really should tie himself to that roof, he was really giving him a warning. If he was a smart person, he probably would have understood what that meant. But then again, if he was a smart person, we wouldn't have had this epic story. Thank you, OP, it was a great one. Our last story today comes to us from Big Capper 69. I won over $5,000 in court after a car accident that I caused? Let's jump right in. Okay, so just a little bit of info before I get into the story. Also, sorry this might get a little long, but I hope it's worth it. I, 22 male, work construction and run a few crews, and I'm a foreman because I've been working in this field since I started working summers when I was 14. That's legal in my state. With this being said, I have a lot of experience and get paid really well. For my job, I need a truck that can pull a lot of trailers, and also get into a lot of sketchy job sites, especially in the winter. So I drive a new lifted pickup, F350. Anyways, let's get into it. So about 4 months ago now, I got off work one day and just really didn't feel like making dinner. So I decided to get myself the trusty Big Mac at McDonald's. Well, after I got my order, I was going to pull out into the parking lot to drive home, and I was looking hard over to my left to see how busy the road was before I got over there. Well, I wasn't paying great attention to what was happening in front of me, and as I was creeping forward, someone who was in front of me was stopped and not paying attention either. I ended up barely hitting his mirror and scraping his door with my front end. I immediately reversed and hopped out. I made sure the guy was okay and apologized, knowing it was my fault, and I asked him if he wanted to call the cops. Let's call him Brent. Brent says, "Nah bro, we're good. If you just get me your insurance info, I think we can get this taken care of." I was fine with that as there was no damage done to my truck, and it's not required to call the cops for an accident if it occurs in a private parking lot. This is relevant later. We exchange info and he seems pretty cool, so I tell him to go get the damage bid and I'll just pay in cash so my insurance rates don't go up, as long as he's okay with it. He says that's fine and we both just leave and I feel like a moron. But all in all, Brent seems like a cool dude, and I just hope we can get it sorted out smoothly. About a month passes by and I haven't heard anything from Brent or the shop I told him to go to. Honestly, I wasn't too stressed about this because if he decided to not get it done, that's on him. Well, he calls me up one day at about noon saying he can't remember my name and he wanted to tell the guys at the shop who sent him there because it seemed like we knew each other. I told him my name and the guys at the shop gave him a deal. Pretty sure they say this to everyone, laugh out loud. He sends me the bid for damages and it comes out to $2,403. This was more than I imagined, but I said to get it done and I'd take care of the bill afterward, and that was that. He hung up and said it was cool, and I went on with my day as usual. Another month goes by, and I don't hear anything until Brent calls me up while I'm at work again and says, "Hey brother, I talked to the shop and they said they can't get me in for another 2 weeks or so, and they may end up charging me more if they find more damage." I say, "Okay, sounds good. Just let me know, man. I hope it goes smooth for you, and I'm sorry for the inconvenience." He seems to take it good, and I'm really just trying to be a good person. He responds with, "Well, after talking to my wife, I'm okay if you just wanted to write a check for $2,500 and we can call it even." This seemed odd to me, because why the hell wouldn't someone want their vehicle repairs all paid for? I say, "Okay man, let's set a time and place to meet and I'll get you paid." He liked the idea and ended the call by telling me he would let me know. Yet another month passes by and I hear nothing again. At this point, I'm getting fed up and just want this situation to stop being over my head. He hits me up at 11 p.m. one night and asks if we can meet in town. I find this kind of disrespectful because I was nearly asleep and had to be at work at 5 a.m. the next day. Either way, I said that was fine and took my $2,500 cash and wrote up a quick contract saying this payment would be accepted as payment in full for the damages, and by accepting it, it would release me from any and all liability. This was a pretty fair contract, I believe, as it was the deal we had already made over the phone, just in writing. I get to the place we suggested as a meetup spot, I give him the cash, and he signs the contract without hardly even reading it, and he didn't want the copy. This was red flag to me, but I assumed he really didn't care about it all that much, so I just sent him a photo of the contract and go back home for some beauty sleep. As you can guess by now, another effing month goes by with me just living life carefree and not a worry in the world about this stupid car accident. Well, I go to check my mail, and I have a notice from this guy's lawyer that he is suing me for not paying after wrecking his car. This pissed me off, but I also knew I had plenty of text messages and a contract on my side. I immediately call Brent and he blocks my number. Luckily enough, my girlfriend works for a lawyer, so I get him updated and he says he'd love to help. He lets me know I saved my butt by writing that contract, as any contract worth over $500 is to be held up in any level of court in my state. I immediately get to work on my revenge. I remember on the side of this guy's card he had a business logo, and I took pictures of the damage, so I hop online and get to the BBB to look up who owns this company, thinking that surely he couldn't own the business because he is such an idiot. I was wrong. This guy owns the company, and I can see that he has about 12 one-star reviews, all in dispute because of his shady business practices, telling people it will cost one thing and then charging them 4 times what he said it would. Sound familiar? Remember when he said the shop may charge more than the original $2,400? That's right, he was suing me for $10,000. 4 times what the shop had told him it would cost. Unbelievable. He was trying his same sneaky crap on me. My lawyer takes note of this and we show up to court ready for war. This guy is sleazy. As we get there and all set up, he says, "You ready to give me more of daddy's money?" with a smirk. I guess just because I'm young and drive a nice truck and could afford $2,500, laugh out loud. His lawyer gets up and starts trying to say BS from me hitting and running, and Brent barely got a picture of my license plate. That I tried to bully him into taking a deal for only $2,500 when the damage was clearly more than that. There were obvious holes in his story, and he really didn't have much to say. Just imagine the smile on my face as my lawyer lays out the printouts of our text messages and the physical copy of the contract, which was signed by Brent. His lawyer was ghostly white and looked sick. After laying out all of the evidence, my lawyer pulled out a little hidden gem, the printouts of all the complaints we found on the Better Business Bureau, and how he was doing the same thing to me. That was the final nail in the coffin, as the judge said he had seen enough. He asked Brent for any final statements, and Brent said, "I don't even have the $2,500 anymore. Can I just get that then, and we will be okay?" Literally admitting to the judge that he had received my money, and his story was just a load of horse crap. I thought his lawyer was going to strangle him. It was beautiful. The judge ended up ruling in my favor and demanded him to pay my legal fees as well as damages and lost wages because I had to miss work to be in court. The absolute sweetest part was that this particular day, my crew was on a very high-wage job, and I was technically the one getting paid before I paid them out as subcontractors. This means I was to be paid $475 an hour, and this whole ordeal took about 5 hours. He ended up having to pay me almost $5,000. I don't think I've ever been so happy in my life. I don't have all that much legal experience myself, but one thing I do know is that lawyers absolutely hate lying clients. When the lie comes out, it blows up in their face and makes them both look like idiots, the client and the lawyer. Without a doubt, that lawyer absolutely ripped into Brent after this case. OP, I hope you were able to get your money back, because I know in small claims it can still be hard to get it back, even though the judgment's been in your favor. Check out all 3 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.